say 30.
Number 1.
39.
1.
38.
37.
36.
35.
34.
33.
32.
31.
30.
29.
28.
27.
26.
25.
24.
23.
22.
21.
20.
19.
18. 17. 16.
15.
14.
13.
12.
11.
10. 9. 8.
7.
6.
5.
4.
3.
2.
1. It's time for mouthwash. Giddy up.
Good evening and welcome to the Mouthwash Talk Show, a minty, fresh take on politics. And yes, episode 89. Wow, we're getting up there in age on this thing. So as usual tonight, we have the live chat will be on, will be up. And if you have a question for our candidate or the panel or whoever, for the Pope, I don't care, put it up there. Put it up there and I monitor those as the show goes along. And I will apologize in advance. I do make up words. And I am the producer, the button pusher, and all that. So if things go wrong, you can blame me. I'm the guy that does all that wrong. But hey, we got a good show tonight. We have Secretary of State candidate. It's a libertarian, Jeff Maurer, as he says, not lesser. Maurer is gracious enough to come on. And we've asked the other candidates, and Diego has at least told me that he's going to pass. But the other candidate, Destiny Wells, she hadn't even answered back. And she told me a while back that she'd come on our show. So I think that's advantage Jeff Maurer. And they are the lessers on this one. So we're going to get to the show. I'm going to go ahead and bring Jeff on. I just met him tonight. I didn't get a chance to watch the debate last night. I was actually in the ceramic studio making pots. So that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Jeff on right now. Here we go. Mr. Maurer, how are you this evening?
John, good to be with you. Thank you for having me on. Feeling very good here. Had a really good debate. And I think as you're able to see it, as you're able to read some of the media reflections on it, it highlights two very different opinions on what our future should be. So the Republican Diego Morales did decline to, or didn't respond, so didn't participate. And there were two out of the three opponents or candidates on the debate stage, myself, the Libertarian candidate, and Destiny Wells, the Democrat candidate. And so between my perspective and my solutions and the Democrat solutions, I think you really get a sense of two very different futures. And the whole value of debates is for voters to be able to compare their options, do side-by-side shopping, just like we would with a car or a donut. That's the value, and I think it was a good night for democracy and a good night for our republic.
Well, I caught a couple snippets of it, but this will be like a good show for me to learn. And I love doing this show because I learn so much more than I thought I knew. So I really don't know that much after I do these shows. But so give us a little background about what you do, how you do it, and where you do it.
Sure. So much of my career has been in finance and technology. I've managed a $300 million budget in a large nonprofit and worked closely with internal audit, external audit, and really fine-tuning the audit controls and accounting controls that made sure that processes, systems, and at the end of the day, cash were tightly controlled and accounted for. So then I went on to a career in trucking transportation, worked for a restart company in the tech space. I worked in sustainability and energy efficiency. And then I even founded and ran my own VR tech startup here in Indiana for a number of years. So seeing the shape and contours of technology as well as security and the proper ways to institute processes and to scale them up That's very much what influenced my interest in the Secretary of State's race, looking at our elections as an entrepreneur to say, wow, there's a big problem here, right? We've lost so much trust. There's so much opacity. What we lack is the ability just to see the whole process and to have confidence that it's working correctly. So what tools, technologies, processes, and people do we need to address that? And how can we create value in that process? So that's part of what led me to become the Libertarian candidate for this office. And it's been a fun and exciting journey all this way. We are down to, I think, 29 days before Election Day now. So today you have now, I think, 3 more hours to get online and register to vote. If you have not already done so, please do so. And early voting begins tomorrow.
Yes. That is correct. Well, it sounds like you're very qualified for this job. And I did hear one thing about you said we should audit all 92 counties. I really like that suggestion. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and play, since I usually will forget small talk, and we don't have peeps on the streets tonight. But I'm going to go ahead and play small talk, and I have not listened to it. I have not watched it. So everybody's getting to see this for the first time.
All right.
And I will say that Mark Small burned a Trump flag live on Twitter today. So I don't know what we're going to have here, but let's go ahead and see this, and then we'll have the panel on the other side, and you'll be on the hot seat. And at least you got Lucy Brenton on your side. She's usually our toughest questioner, but I think
Lucy's ferocious. Don't get on her bad side.
Yeah, she'll probably give you a hard time. That's for sure. So,
she should. I mean, and that's just the thing, right? This is why we have debates. You should give all candidates an equally hard time. From all of us, this is our ability to test drive. So if you're thinking about buying a car, go out and test drive it. Don't take a nice easy drive. Punch the gas, slam the brakes, see if this thing really works. And this is the functioning of a debate in our democratic republic. So yes, hard questions from everyone.
All right. Well, hey, then giddy up. That's what we want to hear. Well, let's go ahead and look at Small Talk with Mark Small, and we'll have the panel on. It looks like we have all of them backstage and their internet's working. Wow, what could go wrong?
Hi, I'm Mark Small. This is Small Talk for October 11th, 2022. The election's coming up. You got to think about one office for which you vote. Amongst many, and that is Secretary of State. Why is the Indiana Secretary of State's office so important? Well, it's because, first of all, that person is the chief election officer of the state of Indiana. That sounds a lot more all-encompassing than it really is, but it's still very important. There are several things that person does in the office. For example, enters into agreements to use a threat intelligence and enterprise security company. That's kind of important. But the other aspect is the votes for Secretary of State determine whether a political party is going to be one of the 2 major political parties under Indiana statutes. The reason that's important is that mid-'80s heads of the 2 parties met probably in a room or a bar, either in the Indianapolis Athletic Club, because it was still open at the time, or the Columbia Club, and figured out how they were going to set things up so the 2 major political parties control the states. And they really didn't consider that maybe there'd be a movement so that one of those 2 parties could get bumped. The point being that the 2 major political parties have access to ballots, they put people on election boards, and they get to hold primary elections. There are all sorts of stuff like that that are just groovy. That shouldn't be a test. That shouldn't just go to 2 parties. We need to change that statute. But the thing is, when you go in there and vote for the person for Secretary of State, if you vote for the Libertarian candidate, for example, Jeff Maurer, that means you're voting for somebody, and that party has a greater chance of being on the ballot every year then, because the Libertarians have been for about 20 years or so, but that really helps them to make sure that they're on the ballot. And Jeff Maurer is very well qualified. Destiny Scott Wells is a Democratic Party candidate. She's very well qualified too. You look at those candidates and figure out whom it is that you're going to vote for. The Republicans have a candidate also. When you vote for the person, though, realize you're voting for the chief elections officer for the state. And that's going to have a lot of ramifications down the road. Now, from everything that anybody has said with any credibility, the 2020 elections in the state of Indiana were squeaky clean. So we really don't need to be denying what happens in the elections. We can't deny the results. We had a good election system for 2020, and we need competent people in there as chief election officers, for example. I'm Mark Small. This is Small Talk, and I am a candidate for Indiana House 86th District GOP.
There you go. Hey, I almost got it right this time. You're supposed to be out there, Jeff. There you go. Hey, look at this. The full panel here and everything. This is great. It's clear. It's coming in good. We're going to start with Ed while he's here because last week Ed was on for about 3 minutes and then he went away. So, Ed, what's up tonight? What do you got going? You got any hot football tips, anything? What do you got?
No, hey, baseball season, playoffs getting going, football season's in swing. We're a week away from basketball season. Pacers are already been eliminated from the playoffs. What could be better? It's that time of year.
That's right. That's right. Well, hey, Lucy, I see you're up against the wall tonight, and every week your internet gets better and better. I think that Salem must really be coming into the 21st century.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've got the squirrel going on the hamster wheel, and I've got 2 tin cans and a string. So we've really come up in the world in Washington County, and I'm looking forward to giving my fellow libertarian a hard time. I think everybody should make sure that they are well positioned to accept criticism.
Yeah, that's I love that. That's why tigers eat their own, I guess. So, Tiffany, how are you doing this evening up in Fishers, Indy? Oh, we got martinis tonight, huh? Okay.
Just a Manhattan. It's the first drink of the day. Just wanted to have it with friends. Cheers. And I did watch the debate last night, so I'm anxious to chat about that. And I'm here. Somebody asked about Bigfoot. He's still in the trap. He's not gnawed his paw off, so we'll see how this goes.
He can still do it. So, and as usual, we have the live chat is open, and if there's a good question on there, or if there's a bad question, I'll put it up. I ain't scared. So let's get started with this thing. Who wants to go first? Or wait, let's see. I don't know if I should ask the guest if he wants to talk about anything, but I think he already sort of explained, a little bit of stuff. So we'll just get into the questions. So Tiffany, I see you're ready to go. Giddy up.
So, Jeff, from your perspective, as you're running for Secretary of State, what's the number one problem in our voting system? What's the number one problem that we have right now?
Sure. It's just about transparency and access. It's also opaque. It's behind, it's in this closed black box, and we can't look in and see what's going on. We're told that everything is correct and that we should trust it. And you heard this in the debate yesterday. I'm old enough to remember, and I won't speak for anybody else here, but I'm old enough to remember the 2008 financial collapse. And for years, we were told that credit default swaps were safe, secure. They're so complex that only self-proclaimed experts could understand it, and that we regular people would never understand it and know how these things worked. And yet it quacked like a duck and sounded like a duck. And in the end of the day, it was a duck because they imploded, and they nearly brought down our economy. They nearly brought down our nation. And they were so toxic and so vulnerable that common sense people saw these and said, wait, this just doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. We need to be able to see in and understand this better. And I fear that our elections are very much in a similar situation where I hope against hopes. I want to believe that the majority of them are good, that by and large we have secure, safe elections, but we need to be able to show that. We need to, just like a middle school math assignment, we need to show our work and take credit for what's good and immediately get to work on fixing what needs to be fixed.
So that's my question. What needs to be fixed? And I'm just a voter. I worked the polls during the primary, got exposed to the machines and the receipts and tallying everything and making sure that everything works. So would you say that we need more transparency on who's registering to vote, or what's going on when they sign in to vote, or how we're handling the equipment? What area?
The short answer is all of the above, because all of those are touch points that lead you to trust in the result. So let's imagine together the lottery, right? If you buy a lottery ticket, you can look it up and you can see which was a winning ticket, and you can compare it to your own printed receipt to know whether you won or not. But now imagine an awful lottery in which they tell you, no, you lost, but we won't tell you what the winning number was. And you're not allowed to write down what your number selection was or your random numbers. So do you really know? And how could you track that? So the greatest failure, the greatest urgency right now is that we need to create the processes and tools so that we voters can track our votes and see them, and see that our votes and only our votes were the ones that were counted.
So, so are there any votes that you believe went uncounted in Indiana, uncounted or counted twice? Do we have any ideas about any election fraud occurring in Indiana? Because I love the analogies that you're using. I'm a Southern girl, and I think if you can relate something to like greasy food or somebody named Bubba, I think people always really understand. But I feel like you're asking for transparency, pointing out potential issues. But my question is, are there problems?
So yes, there are myriad confirmed problems. So let's take one about non-citizens. I've gotten to speak with a number of county clerks, and they tell me about non-US citizens who walk into their offices and say, I need to disenroll from my registered voting. And what's happened is they're here legally, they're in the legal, lawful US citizenship process. And as part of that, they cannot commit a crime in the US. So toward the end of this process, they're almost about to become US citizens, and they're checked to say, oh, that's not correct. You're registered to vote, which of course is illegal. And so they then need to come to disenroll, to unregister to vote before they can complete their US citizenship record. So by fact, we have, these are onesies and twosies as best as I've heard, but there might be dozens or hundreds more. We don't know, but we know that there's at least one, which means we know that there's a problem. We don't know exactly where they're being registered. It could be at the BMV. It could be one of these voter registration organizations that registers people on the street. We don't know. And all this requires a lot more digging and research. That's just one example of potential voter fraud. Let's look at voter fraud vulnerability. Let's look at the million plus voters who are registered in Indiana and may not have voted. So Lucy knows our Libertarian Party chairman, and he lives downtown Indianapolis on East Washington Street, and he owns his own home. He knows who lives in his home. He's owned it for 10 years and knows the homeowners before then. And he was, because he's the party chairman, he has access to data that you and I as average voters or citizens would not. So he's able to see everybody, all the voters who are registered at his address. That would be something interesting to know, right? And he expected to see himself and his family members. He was shocked when there were 11 people registered at his home in a household of 4. So who are these other 7 people? He knows their names. He can see their names. They've never lived there. He doesn't know who they are. And what's even more alarming is he keeps getting mail addressed to them, physical mail from municipal and government agencies saying, here's your real photo ID, or here's your confirmation for voter registration. Whoever is behind this, whether it's accidental or intentional, we know that they are proceeding to be in position to vote. And so this massive vulnerability, one of the major reasons why we need to clean the voter rolls, is because we have this capacity. And I gave the analogy yesterday in the debate. One of the common sense things we do when we move into a new home or a new apartment is change the locks. And cleaning up our voter rolls is like changing the locks. It keeps bad people from doing bad things in our name. I had my identity stolen in 2014, I believe it was, and it was a miserable process. Somebody used my name to sign up for all these utility accounts and incurred debt in my name. And people are doing that and can do that with our votes because of sloppy and out-of-date voter rolls. So there are myriad instances of actual fraud. There are myriad and even more and greater vulnerabilities where somebody can commit fraud. So we should be very concerned. I mentioned last night, also in the debate, the CEO of a company called Konnech, Konnech, was arrested last week or within the week in Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles County DA has not released or unsealed the indictment, but it's clear that his company, which does operate in Indiana, so Indiana uses poll chief software. We use that to manage at least our poll workers, maybe some voter registration components. We don't yet know. But that data was found against contract to be hosted on servers in the People's Republic of China. So there are all these vulnerabilities throughout the system. And that's why I'm calling for a comprehensive 92 county audit, top to bottom, all of the technology, all of the cybersecurity, all of the processes, all of the handling, all the secured rooms. Everybody who touches the process of our elections should be part of that comprehensive audit.
But as I listen to you point out some of the vulnerabilities, it sounds like some of them lie outside of the system. You've got BMV, you've got a need to do like title searches to see who's coming up under addresses. So it's so much more than just, there's fraud, but it seems like it's not necessarily, within how the ballots are done. It's the outside influencing in. So I thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Thank you.
And you're correct. All of those are vulnerabilities. So if you think about making a McDonald's hamburger and all the vulnerabilities in compromising the integrity of that food, right? What would make somebody sick is it's not just the store, it's not just the restaurant, it's not just the kitchen, it's not just the front counter, it's all of the manufacturing, it's all of the warehousing, it's all of the transportation, it's everybody.
I
all
will
the
tell
way.
you, there's enough preservatives in a McDonald's hamburger that you will never get sick.
How about a Chipotle salad then? So and to be fair, remember they
Well,
had
you know what is funny is that I went to Hooters and that's the only place I will not get a salad because I don't trust their food handling. So I'm with you 100%.
Yep. And so you're exactly right. And a comprehensive audit needs to look at all of those inputs and look upstream and to be able to say, to draw a line and say, okay, within our purview, within the Secretary of State's office, within the county clerk's offices, these systems are in control. And if we have vulnerabilities, it means it's outside. And that means we need to push up the supply chain and then start looking at BMV or looking elsewhere to identify vulnerabilities further up in the supply chain.
Do all of the candidates agree about needing to audit the system?
I'd like to say that we don't know if all the candidates agree because one wouldn't show up to the debate last night. Why was the Republican missing? Why would he not answer to the League of Women Voters? As a woman, I feel personally disrespected. We worked so hard. Our ancestors, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers endured torture in order to be able to vote. That's where the League of Women Voters came from. They hosted and moderated the debate last night, and the Republican was glaringly missing.
Yeah, it was interesting. But before you get to that, Lucy, Dorn's got a couple of questions here that are good. But to Jeff's point about voter rolls, so when I ran as an independent for mayor, I got 8,700 signatures, and 1,100 of those, which is 14%, were registered voters in Indiana, but they had the wrong address at the voter registration. And we sued them in federal court, and they were found negligent that, hey, the BMD didn't update things. They didn't record things. So basically voter registration wasn't doing their job, but yet I was still punished for that because they didn't do their job. And then guess what? I don't get on the ballot. So I can feel that. So this is, I don't know which question. I'm going to put this one up here.
John, while you're getting the question, let me just touch on that. You hit on exactly one of the major problems that we as a state need to address. So within the executive branch, there is no clear owner of which branch, which division, which department owns identity. BMV is the main one, but other Department of Revenue and many other agencies own data as well. And these agencies don't share updates necessarily and don't communicate. So if you update your gun license, it doesn't necessarily update your BMV or your voter registration. And so we need leadership. And this is what I'm calling for. We need real leadership within the executive branch to say, who owns this? Where is the one definitive address for a citizen? And let's have all the other agencies build off of that.
I like that. I want Todd Rokita in charge of my identity.
Whoever it is, we need leadership.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, on that one, we do have the motor, does the ball get dropped because the BMV didn't report it to voter registration, or did voter registration not do it? So when you have too many hands in the kitchen, the pot gets things. So before you go again, Tiffany, I want to get Ed in here, but so these are the two choices of questions that we have from Dorn. Does our guest see any need to or benefit by using blockchain technology in our election? And then hold on, this is the other question. What is Mr. Mars going to do about ballot access more equitable for all parties? So which one did you want to answer? Because we're not doing both of them, although they're both really good questions. We may
let's talk about blockchain, because I think that's even interesting. And that didn't come up in the debate at all. So as a technologist, I believe that technology can help us move forward. And currently, one of the challenges of nearly every single solution in the elections industry is a compromise, right? What we gain in convenience comes at a cost in security, and vice versa. Blockchain is different because it enables both. It's transformative because it can enable both. Long term, in my heart of hearts, I believe that is the direction we'll end up in. But right now, what we need to do immediately is to secure our trust in the elections that we have before we build onto it. We need to solidify our foundation before we can begin to build a house on top of it. So Dorn, long-term, yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot of potential here for blockchain. Other states are using it, have been using it, and are demonstrating its effectiveness and security, but we're not yet ready for it.
Wow, that's good. So we have questions. So Lucy, Dorn got to get your question. So Ed's next, but I'll come back to you next, Lucy. I know that you're chomping at the bit over there. I see you. So Ed, being the lone Democrat on this here show, what question do you have for this fine libertarian candidate for Secretary of State?
Hi, Ed.
Well, I may have a bit of a softball here because besides being the only candidate to come on this show, what else? There's a lot of things that separate you from the other two candidates. I know that, but what would you say for each candidate's the number one thing that separates you from each of them?
Good question. I don't want to put words in other people's mouths and speak for others. I just know I'm very narrowly focused on these solutions. And in the opening statement that I did not get to give in the debate last night, I wanted to ask all listeners to listen for solutions, listen for actions that we can take today to give us a different and better tomorrow. So I'm focused on specific solutions, namely receipts and audits. And I think if you listen to my opponents in my Republican, if you ask me today, what does he want to do? What are his proposals and solutions? What's his platform? I couldn't tell you. He's reversed on so many positions. It's completely unclear to me what it is he believes today, unfortunately. And my Democratic opponent, there are areas where we agree, maybe on redistricting and ranked choice voting. And there are areas where we diametrically disagree, as you heard last night, about the proper role of government in our elections, certainly the federal government. So I think I focus on solutions. And if you listen to the other candidates, you should ask them the same. And being present and accountable to answer these policy questions is the first step.
Yeah, I would say that, and I've said this 80 times on this show, 80% of candidate I vote for is how accessible they are. If you cannot contact your representative, senator, whatever, what good are they? I mean, it really, and I know they can't answer every one of them, but by gosh, they could, they could try. I mean, and not, I just think that's one of the things. And, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. I understand that. But
John, if I can interrupt there, one of the things I'm most proud of is that, all candidates have a signature palm card or lit card or rack card. And it's what we've given out thousands, tens of thousands of these across the state. And even if you disagree with everything, even if you hate my photo on the thing, importantly, you should see on the back, I have a phone number and an email address. That phone number reaches my cell phone. I get it. My phone rings. I will see it. And I promise you, people aren't shy about telling me what they believe. And that's good. I want that. So we could disagree on everything, but my job is still to serve you, is still to represent you. And so I need to hear from you, and that line of communication needs to be open. So you could hate everything about me, but know that you can access me and hold me accountable.
Well, so far, I don't hate everything about you, so you're doing a fine job. So Lucy, let's see if you can get past Lucy. I mean, her husband already threw a question at you, so you did well on that. So let's see about the other half of this thing.
I really want to know about practical solutions. And one of the things that I heard from the Democratic candidate over and over again is that we're a democracy, we're a two-party system. No, we're not a two-party system unless you count the fraud of one playing good cop and the other playing bad cop and then switching roles every 4 years. And we're factually not a democracy. So I'd like to start there, but I'd really like to know about what kind of practical solutions can we have? I log into Amazon, I look at my orders, I practically see the guy walk up my steps and take a picture of it. Why can I not do the same thing with my vote? And how would you make that so?
So great questions. And as an entrepreneur, I start from that perspective as well. Just last week, I was at Purdue Fort Wayne University. They were very kind to invite me to come speak. And I came into this large classroom, classic auditorium. The seats go way up high in the back. And it's been admittedly about 20 years since I've been in school myself. And I remember sign-in sheets, right? You had to take a pen and sign in. It was the honor system. And if there was ever a question of integrity, you could look and say, well, did Bob have this exact same signature as Tom? And is that the same pen that was used? It was a different time. And today, or this week, what the students did is they flashed a QR code on the screen on the big projector. Everybody took out their phones and they followed the QR code link and they signed in using that secure link. And the professor was very keen to tell me it's geofenced. So if they took a photo of it and texted to their friend who was asleep in bed, it wouldn't work. They couldn't sign in for attendance for class unless they were physically there using their own devices. The technology has changed. And this is part of the disconnect that came up in the debate, where we expect a higher and better degree of customer service, and our elections are in doubt, or part of the reason why they're in doubt and why they're questioned is because we're just so far behind and falling behind faster. So one of the specific types of things that I want, yes, Lucy, is a receipt for your vote, something that you can track it, just like a package, and maybe more like a FedEx package where you can't see the contents of it. You can't see who you voted for. That's still a secret, or it ought to be. Footnote on that. We should come back to that later. But you should be able to track that package through the process to see that it was received, counted, and then audited, and follow it through. That way you have confidence that it's in the system, it's being counted.
I'm also, as a follow-up question, concerned about the vulnerability of software. We saw that the CEO of Connect that you mentioned, his last name is Yu. He is accused of taking personal data about the poll workers and feeding that to China. I mean, that is a serious national security issue. And I also saw on YouTube, of course, I can't post it now, I don't know where it is, but a 12-year-old kid hacking the very same machines that when I work the polls, I have used, thinking, how could I possibly know, even if I'm in the inspector, that that's accurate and hasn't been hacked? Do you have any ideas on that, since you're a techpreneur?
So all of these things need to be examined, and we need outside expertise. We need to have multiple opinions. One of the great vulnerabilities in our system right now is the fact that we don't have two opinions, not even two opinions, ideally three, right, for Minority Report. We have one organization called VSTOP, the Voting System Technical Oversight Program. They're professors based out of Ball State. They answer to the Secretary of State. They're funded with $4 to $5 million worth of taxpayer dollars, and all of their work is secret. We can't see what they're doing. They won't answer to us. Multiple organizations and independent journalists have requested a copy of the 2020 post-election audit report. You would think that they've done it. They've said everything is great and safe. Okay, perfect. And for my Democrat opponent on stage last night, if you really are so confident, then why can't anyone see a copy of this report to prove it? Don't just tell me about it. Show me. You've got to show me. So VSTOP is the one and only organization that is in charge of effectively cybersecurity for our voting processes. They have a twofold mandate. Number one is to certify election hardware and software, and the second part is to do this post-election audit to make sure that everything's working correctly. So imagine, Lucy, that you and I ran a coffee shop, and VSTOP would come in and say, okay, your needs are for this specific type of cash register, and after a day's worth of sales, we can confirm it was designed correctly for your needs and the hardware and software operated correctly as designed. Meanwhile, Lucy, you and I have common sense, and we would know that if we left the cash register unlocked, the lights on, and the front door open overnight, we would get robbed. And we can't blame the cash register for that. The problem is that VSTOP has such a narrow mandate, the hardware and software alone. They're not seeing the processes and they're not seeing the people. And worse still rather, is that they're checking themselves. They're grading themselves and telling us that we got a perfect 100 and that we should trust them. So that's an inherent conflict of interest. And if they did discover something wrong with the cybersecurity, with the hardware and the software, would they ever tell us? Because they're the same ones who certified the machines as good to go in the first place. So what I'm calling for is, again, an independent external audit, not the clerks. That was a confusion of my Democrat opponent on the stage last night. I'm not asking for the clerks to do the auditing. I'm asking for an independent agency outside of all of this to do that auditing, to tell us where are their vulnerabilities, where do we need even greater expertise in either new digital cybersecurity or in traditional security measures, just like in St. Joe County, where, hang on a sec, we'll get to you, Tiffany, where the county clerk there was seen in some concerning security video accessing a secured ballot room by herself without bipartisan access. And I think I just saw a link this afternoon that the Republican Party has now sued the Democrats and the St. Joe County clerk, perhaps related to that. So we know that there are vulnerabilities in both physical processes and digital processes. And until we get somebody outside to look in, we're never going to know or be able to see the scope of what's at risk. Tiffany, please.
Oh, sure. So, two comments going back just a little bit when we were talking about potential areas of vulnerability, having wrong people on the voter rolls. I work in real estate, and there's an opportunity when property changes hands where you can remove the seller. If there were a process where you could remove the seller, have that as their primary location and have that fed to the voter rolls, that would be amazing. I think that's one of the ways you end up with multiple people assigned to one
Totally agree.
location. That's how you have dead people on the rolls. That's how you have people who live outside of the state. That's definitely an area that you should add to your list. So that was free. You can have that one.
Already on my list, and we'll talk about a couple others that are really interesting as well. But continue.
Fantastic. But my question was, so I love that you're talking about technology. I sat through a seminar last week about blockchain technology, so I feel a little bit smart about it. And I love it because, you can't hack it and it is what it is. I love that about it. But the more that you mention technology and this and that and these different things, I'm kind of at the point where, and I think somebody said it in the comments, like Thor said it, our election should not be electronic. It can always be hacked. I mean, when do we get to the point where maybe it is just more simple to go back to the second Tuesday in November, everything shuts down and you vote in person? And you take all the technology out of it. Maybe we've got the ink on the finger, but I mean, because it's like everything that we introduce and can be hacked. And most of the people who can tell you where the vulnerabilities are, they can tell you because they know how to hack into it. So is there ever really a way, if we let the fox design the hen house, or is a hen house ever going to be, secure? Did you like that? Did you like that analogy?
I do. I think we're going to be friends, Tiffany. So the answer is yes. And the way to do it is with a strong portfolio that reinforces itself. So just like designing a real estate portfolio or financial portfolio, even training wheels on a bicycle, it just creates a sense of balance. So we'll get back to that first. We'll get back to that in a second here. But first, let us talk about cleaning voter rolls. This did not come up in the debate last night, but you give a really great example of one of the data sources where it can. We are extremely hamstrung by HAVA, the Help America Vote Act of 2002. It is federal legislation that basically says if you remove people from voter registries, then it's mostly tantamount to voter suppression. So there are a lot of protections to make sure that you cannot be removed. Good intention, but it creates a lot of problems, such as a very bloated registry. The Pew Charitable Trust did a report a decade ago, 2012, and their estimate that essentially a quarter of all voter registry is inaccurate or incorrect or out of date, which is a huge number and certainly only gotten worse since the last decade. But what I'm proposing are several common sense solutions for helping to compare our voter registry, just sort of common sense sniff tests, if you will, and not to immediately disenroll or unenroll, not even to disenfranchise, but to simply just initiate a process to find that voter in question and say, hey, we have this inconsistency, can you help us figure it out? And that's going to work for everybody. So number one, we can use internal data. We can use Indiana Department of Revenue. If people are alive and have an affiliation with the state, they're probably filing a state tax form every year. And there's an address on that. So let's compare that address every year to the voter registration address, which might not be updated for decades. Second, let's use commercial resources that are available. And Tiffany, in real estate, you know that as soon as you move, you get all the coupons in the mail that say, here's your coupon to Home Depot and Lowe's and the dry cleaner around the corner. How do they know that you've moved, but the government doesn't? And so the answer is there are commercial databases out there that are pretty good. And we can use those as a basis of comparison, not to automatically deregister people, but as a basis of comparison to start identifying issues and vulnerabilities. And third, another good one is the USPS, United States Postal Service, has a database, the National Change of Address, NCOA database. And it's all the forwarding addresses. It's essentially, if you were here and now you're there, it's one giant database for USPS. And that's another great tool to tap into to help reconcile our current voter registration. So we have all these data points that we can use. The question is, who will actually give us the leadership that we need to take action and work with it? And that's up for the voter on election day.
Called Rokita. But I get what you're saying because it's like what I was talking about earlier. And I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You don't have to be. That's the beauty, right?
But
On November 8th, it's your day. You go.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But you're talking about all these external forces that impact our voter rolls, and I love that. I love that you're able to talk about that and bring that in because it's not. Election fraud it can be bigger than what we think it is. It's not just what happens on election day. It's what feeds into it. So that leads me to my question. So, in some states, I don't even know how to say this correctly. Of course, people who are non-citizens should not vote. We agree with that, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's in our constitution, our state constitution. That's very clear. Our Indiana Constitution has two criteria for voting. One is you're a citizen, and two is you've lived here for 30 days. You're a resident for 30 days.
Okay, fantastic. So and we'll do whatever we can to keep that clean. But let's transition a little bit. I guess you guys are responsible for car dealerships.
So yes, the Indiana Secretary of State's office has one of 4 divisions called the Auto Dealer Services Division, and it is primarily in charge of enforcing state law for the auto dealer industry. So if you buy a new car and the title takes more than 30 days to arrive, there's a prescribed series of penalties. Start at $100, I think, go up to about $500. It's essentially a slap on the wrist, but it is the law, and those things need to be enforced. In order for auto dealers to get licenses or the dealer license plates, those are limited and issued based on sales volume and a couple other metrics. So these are the things that are important to this industry, and the Secretary of State's office doles them out or handles them. But as I mentioned in the debate last night, one of the areas where there is uncertainty, where the office really can take a leadership role, is in addressing sort of the gray areas between, especially with emerging issues and disputes between franchise dealers and manufacturers. So let's pick Ford for a minute. So we have a Ford dealer in Indianapolis, and we have Ford, the manufacturer, in Detroit. And Ford dealer says, we want to be able, as an example, and this is a real thing that's happening, maybe not necessarily with Ford, but the manufacturer wants to see all of the customer and prospect data from the dealer. And the dealer says, no, that's my data. That's what I do. That's how I create value. And the manufacturer might have reasons, or even federal reasons, to say, well, we need to make sure they're not terrorists, or they have the right financing, or whatever pressure they feel under. And so the dealers now need an ally to push back and say, no, this is my business, and I need to protect. I'm in charge of protecting the privacy of my customers and prospect customers. So the Secretary of State's office can help adjudicate that and can help facilitate that, perhaps through the benefit of administrative courts, so that there is due process, there is expediency, but also with limited cost. And that's just one of the many different solutions and needs for this division of the office.
So have any car dealerships invested in your campaign? I'm sorry, made campaign contributions?
I had the same thought.
No. So, I mean, it's possible something's happened since we got on the phone call, but as of the time that we joined the StreamYard connection here, that answer is no. And all of our financial statement, all the campaign's financial reportings from July 1 through September 30 are due by, I believe it's October 17th. So within this week. And I don't know how quickly the Secretary of State's office turns around and publishes those financials, but you should have much greater insight into how all 3 candidates have financed their campaigns.
Fantastic. What are your other 2 verticals?
Oh, so the other 2 verticals, we talked about elections, we talked about auto dealers. The third vertical is business licensing, or the business services division. We'll get back to that in a second. The fourth one is the securities division. And I did mention this during the debate last night. The idea is that this is more sophisticated, complex financial crimes, more like a Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme or fraudulent investments with shares and equity. So being able to protect Hoosier voters who are scammed and conned by bad people trying to sell them fraudulent investments. And getting into the business registrations and the business licensing, that's where it becomes increasingly critical to understand how is the organization, how is the corporation or entity structured, and who's being defrauded. Yes, Tiffany.
Dude, so sorry. Oh my gosh. Have you ever registered an LLC?
I have, yeah. And that was
that part's not easy. Try getting something certified, MBE. The paperwork. Oh my gosh. They want everything except for like a swatch of hair from my mom. And my mom passed away. I'm like, how am I going to get that?
You know, if we
like,
weren't,
it
I
is
hate to interrupt you, Tiffany, but if
insane.
we weren't asking for special privileges from the government for every little niche, you wouldn't have to do any of that paperwork.
Yeah,
Well,
speaking of
it's
that,
the world that we live in. I can't help it if I'm a minority female who's also a veteran and I'm
here we go.
disabled. So I got to do what I got
So
to do.
you want me to pay
Play the
extra for
violin.
you because you did
I
those
mean, I
things?
can't help
That's
it.
not
God
fair.
put me in this skin. He made me a woman. I went to the
God
desert
put me
for
in
6
this
months.
skin. He
I
made
drank
me a
enough
woman. He
sand,
made me smart
and I
enough not to
coughed,
join
and
the
I'm horrible.
military.
Okay,
But
I
the
got a
thing that we
serious
talk
question
about,
here.
since we have
I
these
do
small
too.
talks, I think that
Hold
it's
on,
difficult
Tiffany.
for people
Let's
to take
go.
advantage of them because of the hoops that they have to go through. That's all.
Yeah, you're taking advantage of me as a fellow taxpayer.
How am I taking
I
advantage
just
of you?
I
didn't
just
set
wanted to
up
make a
system.
comment on
I'm a mom and
what
Fisher.
Jeff said.
I don't set up any systems.
I just wanted to comment on what Jeff said. Those guys at Lowe's are pretty smart. That's all I gotta say. Back to you, John.
Okay, well, here's a question from somebody in our audience, Thor Wilkinson. It says, Mr. Maurer, will you return us back to constitutional voting and make all parties have equal qualifications? First of all, what the heck is constitutional voting? Help us that don't know.
Right. So this is before we had the party structure that we have now. The original intention, as you can see from our founding fathers, was to really avoid political parties as much as possible. And we've ignored that and just went full throttle with the party structure that we have. So I think the real question is, how do we diminish, if not eliminate, the influence of parties in our political society? And that's a broad question. It's a really important question. And I think that was very much the focus. And Thor, if you allow me to rephrase it that way, you can type back and tell me I can't. But I think that was very much the focus of the conversation yesterday when we're talking about parties and the proper role of parties. So as a libertarian, as a third party candidate, I acutely feel how disenfranchised and diminished my voice is because I'm not part of the two-party structure. And my Democrat opponent kept talking about how we need a two-party solution. Even her whole campaign, her branding is purple. I'll quote it, Indiana is a purple state. And purple implies Democrats and Republicans only. So in all of her language, in all of her actual words and deeds, she is promoting a two-party system. And you could hear me talk about how if you are exhausted and frustrated with the current status quo that we have and the deadlock and the hyperpartisanship and the fighting and the name calling, that is all because is all attributable at the base for our two-party system. What happens in other nations and other free countries with a multi-party system is that we have a lot more diversity of idea and solutions. And we can look at our two-party system as sort of a two-legged stool. And any third party, if we have our power center on two legs, and if it balances and tips onto a third leg, that center of power shifts. And it also holds all legs of that stool accountable. So imagine the sturdiness of a stool, not with 3 legs, but with 5 or 10. And suddenly this becomes a much more balanced system. We're all forced to work with each other. We're all forced to work toward the middle. And for those of us who support ranked choice voting, that's exactly what it does mathematically. It's a weighted average that forces everyone toward the middle.
Yeah, that's a good one. I got a question from my friend Mike King down in Texas. He says, if we have all the high technology, however, the folks operating the technology are corrupt, now what? So, it's like they said that the Fox, Tiffany said earlier, the Fox designing the hen house type of deal.
And so this goes back to sort of the core of the ballot and what is at stake here. So I've been advocating, and maybe I should get into a little more detail of it. I've been advocating a triangulated 3-point vote that gets cast. So the first is the digital vote, the electronic one, and we need that. We can't get rid of that. And Tiffany, you had asked about what happened? Why can't we just go back to paper? And there is a counter movement in Indiana. I often hear it referred to as vote Amish, as in voting before there is any kind of technology, before there's electricity. That movement is often associated with people who believe that Mr. Trump won the 2020 election. So there is perhaps an agenda associated with that. But either way, it's a fun question to ask. Why can't we go all the way back to paper? And the reason why I believe that we do need digital tabulation and digital votes is because as Americans, we've become habituated, probably for the worst and not for the better, we've become habituated to instantaneous, instant gratification on election night. We need to be able to see the results come in and know that they're correct. We know that when results and tabulations take hours or days, everybody gets suspicious. There were boxes of ballots that appeared here. There were boxes that disappeared there. The accusations come, the conspiracy theories come, and we could get ourselves into a situation where there's such great disbelief that people take up arms against fellow neighbors. And then we have another January 6th. So that is the risk of not having accurate and quick results. Hopefully not instantaneous. So we still need that digital tabulation. However, we need at a minimum a paper backup. We need a paper backup for every single vote cast. Ideally, it's a paper ballot that gets scanned and tabulated, but it can also be a paper receipt for the ballot, the digital ballot that's cast. In Indiana, the majority of all votes cast, 60%, 60, have no paper whatsoever. It's just electronic. So imagine, again, going to buy that lottery ticket and you're told, okay, your lottery number is in. We'll tell you if you've won, but you don't get a receipt. You don't know what your numbers are, and you don't even see what the winning numbers are. You just have to trust them that everything's good. And that's not good enough for me. I need to trust but verify. And it's that uneasy sense of dissatisfaction that's driving this whole conversation around our election integrity right now.
I think Hoosier voters should be absolutely incensed at the way Holly Sullivan came in as as our Secretary of State, and then the fact, of course, that she immediately violated election laws on her very first day. And then in addition to that, and this is what makes me most suspicious as a Hoosier voter, because we have had a Republican supermajority at every level in this state, and suddenly, magically, because nobody thought that there needed to be any auditing done, wonder why that was, everything was just cleared, disappeared, and deleted. And I think that we need that sort of election integrity where I can make sure that my vote doesn't get deleted because some Republican who has, been put into office and shoved into office decided that she didn't want those votes examined.
And that's what the triangulated receipt is going to give us. So anything triangulated like GPS, it's just 3 different clocks that triangulate your position on Earth. Triangulated lines, you need 3 points to form a line. So what I'm calling for is a triangulated vote cast. The second piece is that printed paper. It's either the original ballot or a VVPAT printed receipt. And that's sort of where we were circa 2000 in Florida. If you remember that election with hanging Chad and dimpled Chad and pregnant Chad, the idea was that there was an original record on paper and we could look at that original and help to discern what the intention was. But at least there was something original to go to. In Indiana, again, the majority of all votes, 60%, have no original. So we can't audit it. There's nothing to audit because auditing implies we compare 2 different things. And without any kind of paper, there's nothing to compare to. So I won't stop there. That's what we don't even have in Indiana. So in that sense, Indiana's behind Florida circa 2000. That's not a good place to be. What I'm calling for is 100% paper backup. And now by law, we're supposed to have that in time for the 2024 election. We shall see. But I'm calling for a third receipt. And this is the triangulated part. This is a printed piece of paper that you take home. And I'm confident after hearing from my opponents that I'm the only candidate on your ballot who wants you to have a printed piece of paper, like a lottery ticket, that you take with you when you leave the voting booth. It has a unique ballot number. It has a unique security code, like a two-factor authentication code. It does not have your name. It does not have your address, any personal identifying information. It has none of that. It does not have who you voted for. It just shows that this ballot number was cast with this security code at this time, at this place, on this date. And with that, you can go home, go online, and just like tracking a FedEx package, track your package, track your vote. You can't see who you voted for, but you can see where it is in the process. It's received, counted, and audited. And
How much is that going to cost?
Good question. So we don't know because we haven't yet spec'd it out, and we're going to need professional service companies, contractors, to tell us what that is. I can tell you that a traditional VVPAT printer estimates is about $1,500 to $2,300 per printer. And the state just spent $12.6 million on upgraded equipment across the state to comply with 2024. Now, as a libertarian, I assure you the last thing I want to do is spend more money or increase the size of government. So why am I advocating for this? Number one, this is about integrity. If there's one thing government should do, it's protect us and protect our ability to control government. So this is an investment, not an expense. Number two, we have a $16 billion state budget annually. That's $16,000 million. I've managed a $300 million budget, and I can assure you there's always money to spend on the things that we need to spend when we need to spend it. Number three, our state has a $6 billion surplus, and that's likely to grow because of better than expected tax revenues that are coming in, which are also known as taxpayer dollars. So we have more money there, potentially. And number four is this is part of a comprehensive risk management strategy. So on your houses, Tiffany, you probably pay either renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance, but you pay more than zero as a premium to protect against far, far worse and far more expensive costs. And that's what this is. The audit is an insurance policy against a couple different things. Number one, it deters people in the states from suing us. After 2020, Texas and other states sued Georgia and other states where their elections were questioned. So if we have an audit and if we have an audit process and we can have transparent results with receipts, that is a massive deterrent to being sued. And number two is if we are, it's going to dramatically reduce the cost of that litigation. Think about a simple dash cam video on a truck. Well, if it's the truck driver's fault, or if we don't know whose fault it is, it goes to court, everybody fights it out, there are witnesses, there are accounts, there are different memories and recollections, and at the end of the day, a jury has to guess who was most correct. That's really expensive in terms of time and lawyers and cost. But if there's a dash cam video with clear identifying evidence, facts about who did what when, then everybody just knows, let's settle and get this over with quickly and as inexpensively as possible. So it creates the right alignment of incentives. That's what a triangulated vote will do. That's how it pays for itself, more than pays for itself. And if
I agree with you. I think you're right. So this is the problem that I think you're going to run into. So it's going to come down with your ability to work across the aisle and get people on board. Because the first thing Republicans are going to say is that there's no problem with voter integrity in the state of Indiana. We've got a system there. It's triplicated. You know, we know what's going on. We know who's voting. So good luck for you, like working across the aisle and getting that done. And the second thing that I think is interesting is that in December of 2020, I went down to Georgia to help campaign for the two Republicans who were running for Congress. And it was very, very interesting because I would I would knock on doors and I would talk to Georgia Republicans who told me that they didn't want to vote because they weren't sure that their vote would count. So they were not certain that that their vote was going to be counted. They didn't feel like the election system was of high integrity in the state of Georgia. So I think that that is really interesting because that's the last thing you want in a tight race is for people to not vote because they think that their vote's not going to be counted fairly. So I do see some merit in what you're saying. But if you're elected, just good luck.
Well, thank you. It's going to have to be a tripartisan or more approach. We're going to need all these stakeholders together to work through these issues, and we're going to have to do it in good faith. And I'm sorry and disappointed to hear that was your experience hearing from those voters, because that's the loss, right? That's when the system wins because it discourages voters. What I want is for people to have faith, to have trust. You buy a lottery ticket because you trust that if you win, if you're the legitimate fair winner, you're going to be.
This is the thing with the lottery analogy is that people care. That's the thing. And then it's like you vote and then you're like, whatever. So I was an absentee ballot. I was a Florida absentee ballot in that election. I remember we were military. They were like, hey, vote. And I was a Florida resident, filled it out. And I was one of those ballots in a trash bag or whatever. And so I guess it was great that, they had all these paper ballots. But the thing is that the analogy with the lottery ticket is that people care. Like people will check lottery tickets. Like you can look in the newspaper. It's like, yay, I won, or I got 3 numbers. I got a free ticket. But I just wonder how many voters actually care.
So, Tiffany, let me push back on that. Is it that they care or because they can? What if you gave the voter the same tools to check on their vote as they could check on their lottery ticket?
But how many people would? I mean, like voting is like pulling teeth anyway.
Well,
So
they
how do
would
how
if
do
they
you know that
could,
they're
but
going
they
to do
can't.
it?
So they would if they could, but they can't. So they won't. I mean, this is a chicken or egg thing. I mean, one of the things that we know about the lottery is that it's verifiable, it's auditable, and that there are controls in place to make sure that fraud doesn't occur. At this point in Indiana, we have zero baseline to even know if our audits are fair and accurate. The only way to figure this out is to have an independent third party come in. There has to be the political will to make sure that that gets paid for. And right now we have a Republican candidate who won't show up to debates. He won't show up to be challenged at all. He uses campaign funds from his donors to purchase a personal vehicle so that he can go all around, but yet he won't be held accountable to those same people. So if a Republican gets in just because we're a Republican state and, lazy people do that sort of thing, then I have very little faith that we're going to have a fair and accurate election because there will be no political will to do so. It'll just be business as usual in the red state.
So
all right, Ed,
I would also,
let's let Ed get in here.
Go ahead,
I
Ed.
would
Go
also
ahead, Ed.
argue something, Tiffany, that we tend to focus on the person that wins the Powerball or wins. How many of those lottery ticket people? There's a limit on how long you have to claim your ticket.
180 days.
And they're not announcing they're not telling you how many of those people have actually just let those winning tickets, like left them in a drawer, left them whatever. What I would argue is the difference is you have that opportunity to check there. And I do agree with Jeff that having that opportunity, if you're not going to use it, you're not going to use it. But if I want to use it, I still have that ability to check. And I do agree on that point.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, the election costs money, but the lottery brings in $360 million in tax dollars to our state. That's just the tax dollars. So that gives you an idea of how many people play the lottery. Maybe we should put every candidate on a scratch off and sell them for $1.
I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed. And if
say, hey, this is buying a scratch off. You get, one time and see who wins, and that's it.
There are days when I think that there's so much greater trust in our lottery than in our elections that we should just turn over the whole elections to the Hoosier Lottery and let them run it. And some days that seems like a bold idea.
We could get Mark Patrick back. We get Mark Patrick to host the show again. I got his number. Actually, I think we can get him on the show. Maybe we'll offer it to him.
And it's not that you're wrong. I think that, let me finish. I think that in the suburbs, one of the things that's going on, like with the pandemic, parents were able to see what their children were learning in school. And so that started the whole like race with the school board and people wanting to understand what's going on and change control in certain areas and the composition of our school boards. And a lot of it, it's like we're Gen Xers. You know what I'm saying? Like we went to school, we trusted our teachers, they taught us what we needed to know. And so we assume now that when our children go to school, that they're having the same experience. And I think it's the same thing that we're seeing with our voting system is that we just understand that you go and you vote and then, integritous people count the votes and then everything is fair and wonderful. And so as I talk through this, it's a lot about, it's not the service, it's the experience. I loved how you brought in the technology piece, and we have the capabilities to give people a better voting experience. I just wonder, how many millions of dollars the state would be willing to spend to give the voters a better and different experience. Because I think like utopia would be like voting for American Idol, and I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and hold on a second, Tiffany. I just want to say Adam Harvey makes a good point. I'm the only person that makes up words on this show. Okay, let's get that. I said, let's get that straight. I keep my feathers numbered for just such an emergency. So go ahead, Jeff.
Google it.
Google it. Integritus or whatever you said. I don't know. We got fact checkers on this show, that's for sure.
The hard question, I think, here is what's the price for avoiding the next January 6th? What are we willing to pay to not have another January 6th or worse? What if they'd succeeded?
The Constitution, like you've got people rioting, but the Constitution won in the end. It's like, Pence couldn't overturn any votes. I mean, like there are a lot of people that, stormed the Capitol, facing some federal charges, but at the end of the day, it was the Constitution that won. So, what was January 6th really about? I mean, that was about people, believing something where at the end of the day, the Constitution was right. So
Well, I think it was a precursor to the distrust in the election. I mean, in the election process. And I think this is going to be an important cycle and I think it may be harder for people to cheat if there was cheating going on. I mean, because, everybody's going to be looking out for stuff this time. I mean, there are going to be people looking out. But hey, that doesn't mean that.
Oh, wait a minute. To your point, John, if there are people who are looking out, if you go on early vote, and if you look at the people who are working the poll location for early voting, it's not people like you and me. It's like Marge and Ethel. These are retired women, retired men who care. You know how hard it is to get people to work poll locations on election day? It's
Very
a 12-hour
hard.
shift, and it's really grueling. So you can want all kinds of election integrity, but until every American understands the role that they have to play in the system, it's going to be very, very difficult. I mean, everybody has a freaking opinion. Everybody has an idea. Everybody has the opportunity to volunteer and help, and they do not. I'm done.
Yeah, and so we should pause here and give Tiffany commendation for being a volunteer poll worker. It is not easy. It is not worth the money, probably, which is why it's one of the challenges of getting poll workers.
$125
for a 12-hour day of a lot of grueling work. You're on your feet all the time, right? You're not really sitting down. You're out holding hands and taking people where they need to go. It's physically and mentally tiring. It's a long day, and getting people and all the criteria, all the training, all the everything that goes into putting you qualified in place for it is a lot. And that's why one of the reasons why it's very difficult to get poll workers and volunteers. So we need more of that. We need to make their jobs easier and make that training easier. And I would personally like to be able to see ways that we could split that shift, so that way it's 6 and 6, or with some overlap, 7 and 7, let's say. But to make that,
I think if you split it, you lose control. I mean, that's just my thing. If you split
and that's
it, you
where
lose
exactly, and that's where we're going to need to have a bigger conversation with clerks, with poll workers, with the Secretary of State's office. What are the ways to get around this, so that way it's not so onerous and so unwelcoming and offering? But because of all those hurdles, it is all the more commendable that you continue to do that. So thank you.
Yeah. So I got a question for Lucy and Jeff, because you're libertarian folks here. What happens when the dog catches the car and say you get like 13% or 51% or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're considered a major party? Is that a good problem to have?
Oh, John, the question should be, what happens when we win?
Yes. That's what I'm saying. I said I put 51% in there. So
yeah,
and I'm going to say this. I think you're the rainwater of this time around. Because last time rainwater stirred it up, and it very similar sort of situation. We had a few people that were disgruntled with our governor, and then we had the Democrats had a governor. No offense, Ed, that could barely walk, that they put up there, and so it was sort of that. And we have a little bit of that going on this time. We have, Destiny Wells obviously can walk a little better than that, but Diego's, and you can't say he didn't come on the show, because I believe he was number 8 on the countdown, if you were paying attention. So
I did. Come on the show. There are a lot of familiar faces I saw there, and I saw.
Oh yeah, it's like
there, yes.
Some are no longer with us at the State House, so God rest their soul. But people that have come on our show have, they've gone on to victory. So maybe we'll start a trend here that you can do that. But so what happens when you do catch that? When you guys become a real party, so to speak?
So they are a real party.
We are very much
not bad choice of words.
Yeah, they got a candidate. Shit, they got colors. They got people.
I even put yellow up. Look, I put yellow up.
You have an animal? You have an animal?
We do. In fact, actually, the animals is a good story here. So everybody knows what the Republican Party animal is, right?
Yeah.
The elephant. Do we know why? Everybody know why?
I know.
Okay, so the elephant was chosen for the Republicans by the Democrats, because they said the Republicans are old and stodgy and out of context and out of connection. And the Republicans chose the donkey as the mascot for the Democrats. Everybody know that? And know why? Because donkeys are a bunch of exactly.
Oh, I got it. I thought stubborn was the word I was going to go with, but hey.
And so both of those animals stuck, and the parties assigned or awarded those animals to each other. The libertarians are different. We've been ignored for so long that we had to come up with our own animal. And this goes back to the founding of the party in 1971. So we just turned 50 years old. And we chose for ourselves, it looks like a hedgehog, but it's actually a porcupine.
I thought it was. I was going to guess that.
It's a porcupine. And porcupines are quiet, friendly animals. They eat vegetables and just live quiet lives on their own. But if you mess with a porcupine, you're going to get pricked. And that is the fundamental ideology of libertarians. We just want to be left alone. But if you attack us, be ready to be ready for us to defend ourselves.
Yeah, Lucy's a fine example.
See, if it was in the logo, John wouldn't have to guess. But they.
I know. Well, look, I look like a porcupine because the middle one there is, and that's the libertarian. So
I thought it was the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, well, that's supposed to be Lucy Liberty. That was Gary Marble drew that logo for us, and I thought it was very, very good because I had never thought this show would make it to 89 episodes. So I just sort of stole a picture off the internet, and I thought one day they're going to come looking for me and say, "You stole my picture." So we had our own made. So that's how special we are here at the Mouthwash Talk Show, a mini fresh take on politics. So there you go.
And John, if you really want to blow your mind, the word porcupine is from the Latin meaning porcus, like pig, and the word for sort of spike or prick. So it literally translates to spiky pig.
Spicy bacon.
Spiky, prickly pig.
Spiky bacon.
Yeah, spiky bacon. Yeah, that's got a little extra seasoning on it. That bacon does. Well, hey, Jeff, this has been a great show.
Can I ask the last question, John?
Ed, you've been so
quiet. Ed dominated the show all night.
Yeah. You're right. Diego's been kind of all over the place, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Destiny. We've talked a lot about voting integrity, but I know last time we talked to Diego, he was pretty much like he is completely opposed to absentee voting and absentee ballots, and so I just kind of wanted to get your take on that, where you stand on that, and because he was, like, hey, I want to fight to end absentee balloting at all costs, and I was kind of surprised by that, and so I just want to see where you're at on that.
Got it. So I'm not proposing any changes to our current exemptions or to our current abilities for absentee voting. I do not support no-fault mail-in voting, so more like Washington State, where they mail out 3 or 4 million ballots and everybody gets one. I do not support that. And so what should be the case is the exceptions should be the exception, not the rule. I encourage everyone to vote in person on election day. And if your schedule doesn't permit it, then go vote in person early voting. That's the second most secure. And we should note, and I want maybe quickly go down this rabbit hole, early votes are not secure, are not secret. So by state law, and look this up for yourself, it's in black and white in the 2022 Indiana Election Administrators Manual. It is PDF page 180 or document page 170. Death of absentee voter. So Indiana has what's called a dead voter law. We're one of about 13 states that has it. And so if you vote early and then you die before election day, the theory is your vote should not count. And that intention is reasonable and sound. And so how do we cancel that vote? In law, the county clerks are charged, they shall cancel the vote of people who vote early. For mail-in votes, that's pretty straightforward. They go into the secured room, or what should be a secured room, perhaps not in St. Joseph County, and they can pull out the envelope with the name on it and say, all right, this is John Smith. He's died. We're going to take that, tear it up, done. Now, is there opportunity for fraud? They could take 2. They could swap out the ballots. There's all kinds of things that can happen, but that's the idea of at least bipartisan access. Now, what about the 60% of votes that are cast early that are all electronic? And so right there in black and white, it is required that all of our electronic voting machines, the DREs, have a unique identifier number assigned to each vote to tie it back with the voter identity. That data has to be stored for up to 28 days at least in the case of early voting. So if you vote early on an electronic machine, 1, your vote is not secret. It's still associated with your voter identity. Number 2, this data is stored somewhere. We don't know where or how. Number 3, by law, it has to be accessed. And number 4, by law, it has to be deletable. Who has the keys? Who has the login for that? Who has access for that? What audit trail is created? Do we know if one vote was deleted or 100,000? What's the clarity around that? And we just don't know, and we need some answers. And that's one of the many reasons why I'm running for this office. At the end of the day, and I want to just close on this, at the end of the day, when we can count our votes the way we count cash, we're going to finally get the elections that we deserve.
Yeah, and I think that we're at one of those deals where, boy, it sure would be nice to have some faith back in a lot of things, government, everything. So, what I do like about the Libertarian Party is less government. That's good with me. So on that note, if anybody has any other questions, I know Lucy, you didn't get to answer a lot of questions tonight. Ed, you got a few in there, and Tiffany, your questions were so good, we're not even going to give you a hard time about asking so many. So, hey,
I watched the debate last night. Thank you. I did.
Yeah, did homework and everything. It's like, wow.
She's a well-informed voter, and we should encourage and commend that.
Yeah, well, and that's, and we're hoping that, but, as usual, history shows us that midterms do not bring out as many for the presidential election. And I got a real good feeling we're not going to have somebody with 80 million votes and somebody with 74 million votes this time. So when that doesn't add up, it's going to be interesting. So now we come to that great part of our program. I actually have a conspiracy theory I've been working on here a little bit. And Jeff, you can stick around, and you don't have to participate in it, but you can sure laugh along with us. And Tiffany's already got her glasses on. She didn't wait for the preview. So, and I did not warn you of this preview that I put up. So you just have to laugh at me. So here you go. Let's see. Let's put it. Conspiracy theory. There it is.
Hey, y'all. It's time for the conspiracy theory. So you better get your tinfoil hat out, and let's see what's going on this week.
All right, so let's put you down here and Tiffany up there. So there we go. So yeah, this is the portion of our program where we come up with ideas, and some are true, some are false, some even have Bigfoot involved and Bill Gates, and generally some sort of sports analogy from Ed. But hey, it's all open tonight, and I actually have one. I got it right here on my phone. So we'll go here in a second. Let's start with Tiffany, because it looks like her helmet is missing in action there. She looks like
it's my corsage thing. So I don't have a conspiracy theory, but I was exposed to something today that I feel like maybe Lucy or some of the viewers can help me understand better. So I was talking to this guy in my office, and he was talking about Elon Musk, and he mentioned Starlink, and he talked about the vaccine, and he said that Elon Musk has created some chip that they put in people, and it helps like paralyzed people walk again and regain use of their limbs. And then also with the chip, you can see things in your head, and they can transmit information. And that essentially these people could, if they have the chip in them, the Starlink chip, they could become like zombies, like people could take them over. And then we also started talking about the vaccine, and then the vaccine has some kind of metal in it. I don't know what it is. I'm so sorry. But also that this metal can take on various shapes and go to different places of the body where it could be magnetized or vulnerable to some type of magnetic waves. And so people could take over your body.
I got one that I'm going to wear my hat tomorrow now, since you said that, because I don't want the government getting me and all that. So I got a question for you. Does Bigfoot have this chip? I mean, does he have the chip in him, Bigfoot?
I don't know. No. Is it? No, I don't think. He might be vaccinated. I don't know.
I got vaccinated from those. So Ed, we're gonna let's go with you next on this one. What do you got?
So the internet blew up last week when Tom Brady and Gisele Bundchen hired divorce attorneys, and everybody's questioning Tom. He went into retirement, decided to come back. She's mad at him, but I have a little insider information, you see, because Tom wanted to retire when his skills were, he was still playing good ball. He didn't want to see that decline and him, retire as being a terrible quarterback. But then he found out a little secret, and it is, if he plays until he's 50 and his arm's falling off and he can barely throw, the Indianapolis Colts will still hire him to be their quarterback. And so that is why he is sticking around the NFL, because he knows the Colts are going to hire him one day.
The Colts, they're like the guy who dates everybody's ex-girlfriend.
Yes, indeed.
They're going to be, if they keep playing like they're have to change their name to the Ponies. So Lucy,
you give Ponies a bad name.
I was shooting to anger all the Indiana teams tonight, so there you go.
Get them all. Get them all. Any hot selections for any of our bettors in the audience? You got any picks for this weekend on any college football? What's Notre Dame going to do? Bet on them? Don't bet on them? What do you think?
I have no idea. I guarantee you, whatever I say, you should go the opposite. That's how it's going this year.
I'm glad you're back, Ed. We missed you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's like, and all your stuff's working tonight. You got the Prius back. Yes. Hey, life's good again. So Jeff, about 3 weeks ago, Ed had his Prius stolen from his driveway, but he got it back. So, it's all life, and he's got his internet back. It's like, playing a country record backwards. You get your house back, your car back, your internet back.
And I will say this, Jeff. I will say this. They stole my car and they only made it about 5 miles down the road, and then they ditched it at an apartment complex and took all the stuff outside. And the fact that they only went down one road and then ditched it tells me I was right. It was a Spirit Airlines employee, and they did not know how to go left or right. They just had to ditch it where they could.
Straight as long as they could.
They're probably like, oh my God, we should have stolen a Honda Civic. We've got a Prius. People will find us.
Yeah, that's like, top speed, got away going 9 miles an hour. So, Lucy, I don't know what has happened. I think Bill Gates has taken the top part of your cranium off there.
I do blame Bill Gates because, or maybe it's Al Gore. Al Gore invented the internet, and now Al Gore is making my brick wall, fade into my tinfoil hat. So, Tiffany, a couple of things. I'll handle yours first. Just know that Bill Gates is behind everything that you just said. The first thing is Elon Musk's thing is called Neuralink, and it reminds me of the movie Johnny Mnemonic, where they got things wet wired into their brain. So I'm sure that that's something that's going to happen. I have seen people walking with some success. As Dorn posted in the comments, graphene oxide is the name of the thing that you're searching for. And the foremost expert on graphene oxide did a live stream explaining that this is like one of the smallest things in the universe, like a razor blade, right? The thinner a razor blade is, the thinner you are with a knife, the better that it cuts. And so literally he left his pregnant wife and I'll try and find this video for you and post it in the comments later, but he left his pregnant wife who had live streamed this, and he was brutally murdered on the way home after doing a live stream explaining this. And this was a gentleman who was a tech entrepreneur and the foremost authority on graphene oxide. What he was explaining is that because these are literally tiny razor blades that were found in the I don't want to say it. Let's say the cupcakes or the cookies. That's what a lot of people call these things, so that maybe we won't get banned from YouTube. He said the reason you see athletes dropping dead more than anyone else is because they have the most efficient pumping systems. And so they are getting literally torn up from the inside by the graphene oxide. So it's super, super interesting. But I'm going to go with my conspiracy theory tonight. Which is it doesn't matter what state you were in. It doesn't matter which part of the duopoly you were in. Election fraud benefits both sides, and there is little political will to change it. Backdoor, smoky cigar rooms. What are they doing? They are colluding with one another and, taking turns being good cop, bad cop. And so all of that is done. It is a conspiracy because when two people get together, it is by definition a conspiracy. And we know that the two old parties collude all the time, especially to keep out competitors. And competition is exactly what we need.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%. Now, Jeff, this is the chance where you get a jump in there. And I forgot to put this disclaimer up for Lucy. From Dorn. You got every show that happens. And then I will put up the this for purposes only. So if you do have one, then that you're safe. Our legal team says this is all we need to do. We can tell whatever lie we want during this portion.
Overlook that theories is spelled wrong. Just overlook.
Is it really? Oh yeah. See, there you go. Making up words I can't spell. I
have not ever called that out because I thought it was so funny that it was spelled wrong.
I did it on purpose. I'm like, I meant to do that. Pee Wee Herman, I meant to do that. So
this portion is sponsored by Spirit Airlines.
Well, I got too many R's
everything, everything I said before about the conspiracy theory, I didn't really mean it because it was just something somebody said, and I don't think it's true. It was just something somebody said to me earlier. I'm not putting that out there in the universe because
we got the disclaimer right now. You're good.
That's my disclaimer. Like,
all right, Jeff, are you brave enough to give this a roll? Are you going to try this?
No, I don't have a conspiracy theory to share, and I don't have a tinfoil hat with me or nearby. But I can say that the thrust of my work, the reason why I'm here, is to debunk conspiracy theories, so that way we can all see what's actually happening in our elections and have full faith and confidence in them once again.
Wow, well played, sir. Well played. That might have been the best conspiracy theory we've had, in a minute from a guest. So, hold on, let me put my glasses on. Back to the show. That serious stuff is serious. So I have this. I just got this here. This is a quote from Luis Alonso. You heard that guy before, Luis? He said, "It is my belief that the United States is in possession of exotic material concerning unidentified aerial phenomena and extraterrestrials." And it goes on to talk about some of these extraterrestrials are in the Pentagon and in our politics and are all over the place. So I don't know. It's on the internet. It's got to be true. So I don't know. You'll have to. I wish I had the Stranger Things little play. I could play that right now, whatever that music is. So that is going to do it for this fine show. Jeff, you've been a great guest.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
And Ed, it's up to you to try to get Destiny Wells on here. I've sent her a message. It's open next week. And we may have Jennifer Green, Holt Green on, that's running up there in U.S. Congress 1 or 2 district, but somebody's coming on the show next
Congressional
week.
1.
Yeah, Congressional 1, whatever. It's all.
You should see if we can get Angela on too. We could have 1 and 1 and 7, 1 and 8.
1 and 7. Yeah, that'd be. Whoops, I didn't mean to put that on there. So that's nonsense, of course. So with that being said, let me get that part off of there, and we're going to go to the peace out. And Jeff, as we didn't tell you at the start, but stick around after the show. We'll debrief or whatever, and make fun of the other candidates, and talk about all sorts of stuff. So, hey, folks, thanks for joining us, and who knows what we'll have next week, and we'll see you next week. Over and out.
Good night, friends.
Dodger baseball.